Okay, all right. Welcome back to week 4 of the Mindset Shift System, Flip Your Motivation Switch. Today, we're going to be talking about scheduling, planning, and time management. This is a huge one, clearly for everyone. One of the things I'm asked the most about, right? So, the time is now. I read this quote: anyone who takes your time is a thief. Protect your time. It's what makes up your life. And I'm huge on this. That just the concept of time is very important to me. I literally have, I think I've showed you guys before, you can't really see, but this is Father Time. I have tattooed on my arm because just the concept of time is something that I'm always very cognizant of and always thinking of. You know, time is running out. We need more time. There is always time. Time is infinite, and yet there is no time, and yet there's more time. Time heals all wounds. Like, just time is always something there. Give it more time and you'll get there. It's not enough time. It takes time. Like, the time is just super important to everything, especially when it comes to things like goal setting, building habits. As we've spoken about in the previous week's lessons, there's no goal that is unachievable. There's goals that are unachievable in the wrong time frame. There's no habit that you can't build. There are habits that take longer than you've put in to build them. So time is a crucial piece that will always be a part of whatever change that we're trying to make, whether, again, it's health, fitness, relationships, business, whatever the thing is. Time is the secret ingredient. Either giving enough time, not giving too much time, whatever the thing is, time is just super, super important. And that's why I thought we need to dedicate an entire day just to this. So again, we come back to the same loop. We're always here. We start with awareness. I hope you guys have this thing burned into your memory at this point in the course, right? Again, time. You're running out of time. I'm coming back to all of these same cliche things, right? Time is running out. But then on the other side, there's plenty of time. There's not enough time in the day, but then other people will tell you, well, we all have the same 24 hours. So which of these things are true? Do we have too much time? Do we have too little time? There's always more time, right? It's like, oh, well, if I don't get it done today, there's always more time. And yet, oh, like there's not enough hours in the day, but there's always more time. But there's less time, but there's more time. So we have these conflicting views of time, and this already we've spoken about, our brain doesn't like things that don't match up. So since we don't know which one is which, like, do we have more time? Do we have less time? Is there more time? Do I need to seize the day because I could be dead tomorrow? Or is it that I have all the time in the world and I can take all the time I need? And the secret of success, this is super simple. The most successful people in the world, billionaires, hedge fund managers, the most successful CEOs, whatever you want to say, they all have this one thing in common, these two things. They plan ahead for what's coming, and then they plan ahead for what's not coming. That's it. That's really the secret of success, is planning ahead in those two different categories, because they are different things: to plan ahead for what is coming, but also to plan ahead for what's not coming. So what does that mean? Well, first of all, we have to understand this fact. The fact is, humans are extremely bad at estimating time. Like, really, really bad. The worst. We are horrible at it. And as with most things, as is human nature, although we are horrible at it, we think we're good at it. So this is just a fact of being human. We underestimate our flaws to our own I don't know word I'm looking for, but we underestimate our flaws, and it's not good. My just mind blank there for a second. But again, we're very bad at estimating time, right? So a very simple, easy example of this, as of recording, today is February 20 something. I don't know what's today's date. February 21st, 2021. All right. It's just about 1 year since the COVID-19 pandemic really got ramped up and got going. If you try to think about 1 year from now, right? Try to imagine where you'll be 1 year from now. It's almost impossible. But if we think about where we were a year ago, or how fast the entire pandemic has taken place, or how we already went through a first lockdown, a second lockdown, now a presidential election, and all this stuff that all happened within those last few months. It seems like a blink, right? It seems like a blip on the ultimate radar of what is really going on. And therein lies the problem, is that looking forward, we can't grasp what time is. Our brain is very bad at forecasting forward in time. But in reverse, it's bad in the reverse way. It feels much shorter than it is. So to use an example that I use in fitness, if someone comes to me at the gym and says, "Hey, I want to lose 50 pounds," and I go, "Okay, you can lose 50 pounds, but it's going to take a year in the future, a year from now," they're going to go like, "Whoa, a year, that's so far away. Like that's crazy." But again, if I say, think about a year ago, it feels like a blink in the overall grand scheme of things. So it's like, we won't do something because it's a year away, but thinking about what happened a year ago, it literally means nothing to us. It's like, oh yeah, like a year ago, that was like yesterday, you know? So Bill Gates has this quote that most people overestimate what they can do in a year, but underestimate what they can do in 10 years. And again, this lends itself to the same problem, the same logical fallacies that our brain does, is that our brain is bad with estimating time forward. And the farther that time goes forward, the worse it becomes. So that causes us to crunch down things and try to fit them into a smaller time period. What do I mean? So because the farther we get out from today, so a year is hard to estimate, 2 years is harder to estimate, 5 years is almost impossible, 10 years is just crazy. Like who knows what the hell is going to be happening in 10 years? Your brain doesn't like to think on these large, grand time scales, right? So what it does is it takes everything and tries to crunch it into the time scales it does understand, which are 3 months, 6 months, a year. So we'll take a goal that theoretically, logically, if we really think about it, should take 5 years or something like that. And we'll be like, yeah, I'll do this in a year. I'll learn fluent Spanish and lose 50 pounds and, move to Puerto Rico and open up a surfing hut on the beach by next summer. Because logically, we know that all of that is not going to take that small amount of time. But if I say I'm going to do this in a 6-year time span, that time horizon is too grand for our brain, and it doesn't like that. So it's just gonna like, all right, let's just crunch it into what kind of time frame do I understand? I understand a year. I understand 6 months. So it tries to do that. But now we do this to our own dismay, because then we set ourselves up for failure. We set ourselves up for disappointment, because you can't do that, right? We can't fit a size 10 shoe inside a size 2 box, if that's a saying. Maybe I just made it up. But the thing that happens then, as we've spoken about before, is when you set yourself up for failure, your brain learns failure, and your brain does not like failure. So now when we're setting goals that are really supposed to be 5-year goals for 1 year, or setting goals that should be 1-year goals for 3 months, or setting whatever the time is, that we're trying to compress the time and inherently setting ourselves up for failure, what that does is that gives us that learned helplessness that I spoke about in both weeks 2 and 3, where we don't even want to try anymore, right? So if every time I think about starting a business, my business plan really should be a 5-year plan, but I'm trying to do all of this stuff in 6 months, I'm going to fail because it's impossible. Maybe the second time I'm going to fail again because it's still impossible. And the third time I'm just going to quit, because I'm going to go, well, like, it's impossible, right? It's impossible for me to accomplish this goal. But it's not impossible for me to accomplish this goal. What's impossible is for me to accomplish this goal in the time frame that I've allotted for it. So a better, more realistic understanding of time is going to allow us to achieve the goal. And there's 2 things we want to think about when we think about time. So one is Parkinson's law. And this says work expands to the time available for its completion. You might know this. Again, I spoke about this in the earlier courses, where, if you're when you were in school and you had 2 weeks to do a paper, what do? You wait until, if you're like me, the very last night to do the paper. Whereas the same paper, if the teacher would have told me, hey, this is due in 2 days, I would have somehow gotten that paper done in 2 days. So we because we have more time, we make the task fill that amount of time. But then we have Hofstadter's law, aka the planning fallacy, which basically says that it always takes longer than you expect, even when you take into account the planning fallacy. So now we understand that if we're already bad at estimating time, right? And we're taking something that should be a 1 year or a 2 year goal and trying to shove it into a 6-month time frame. And we're already bad at that. And now it's going to take longer than you expect. Then already we've seen, again, that we're never going to get these things to match up, which are our goals and reality. And then we get into that negative cycle of, okay, I'm setting goals that are impossible goals give me self-defeating self-talk, make me want to set worse goals. And I just go swirl, down. And a big part of how we can take back control and we can get out of these negative loops, right, of setting the wrong time goals and setting the too big goals for the too small things, is to be proactive instead of being reactive. So to take back control of our time, we're going to start talking about planning and things like that. And all that planning does is come back to taking a step back and making decisions before the time happens. So just like how I said before that your brain, when you're thinking about too big of a time frame, it doesn't want to think like that, and it will just crunch everything down. In the same way, if you're thinking about something in the moment, you're under a lot of pressure, right? Meaning, like, to use dieting as a very simple example, if I'm trying to lose weight and I walk into my kitchen without an idea of what to eat, and now I see a box of Oreos and a thing of carrots, and I'm in that moment trying to make that decision, my brain is flustered and it's like, I don't know what to do, and it just picks one. Whereas if I make that decision beforehand, when I'm not in that actual moment, and I take a step back and forecast out and you do this ahead of time, being proactive, it's much easier for me to make that decision because my brain isn't pressured in that moment, right? It's not like it doesn't have to make that decision right now. So it takes some of the pressure off and it makes it much easier to make that decision. The next thing I want to talk about is called the black swan. So if I go all the way to the back here, I said that successful people plan ahead for what's coming, right? And that's the being proactive, taking into account that we are going to overestimate what we can do, taking into account that whatever we want to do is probably going to take longer than we plan to do it. But people who are successful also plan for what's not coming, okay? So author Nassim Nicholas Taleb wrote a book called The Black Swan. And the black swan is basically his way of describing events that we never could have seen coming until they came. So the example he uses in the book is that up until the discovery of Australia, where black swans live, there were only white swans. So everywhere else in the world, there were only white swans. So before we discovered Australia, before people traveled to Australia from other countries, however many hundreds of years ago that happened, the possibility of there being a black swan was impossible. There were only white swans. All the history books only wrote about white swans. The only thing that existed were white swans. And then someone discovered Australia and they saw a black swan. And all of a sudden, the entire paradigm of what was possible then shifts. So now the question becomes, how do you prepare for a black swan, right? If you cannot actually understand it or prepare for it, what can you do? And again, this comes down to being proactive and thinking about everything ahead of time, right? So we can't prepare for things that we don't see coming, but we can prepare for the most probable things and then let the chips fall where they may, if that makes sense, right? So, and we have to kind of understand that we plan ahead for what is coming, right? That goes without saying. Okay. So if to use the dieting as an analogy, I plan ahead with my meal prep, but I also know that 2 nights this week I have my kids' PTA meeting, which is they do at a local burger joint. So I need to plan for that. And then I also know that, Wednesday night is date night with my wife, and we usually have 2 glasses of wine. So I need to plan for that. So I need to be proactive in planning for that 100% of the time because I know that that's coming. But I also need to try to plan for what's not coming. So what happens if my daughter has a tantrum and tells me that she, I want to take her to McDonald's to calm her down. Am I going to be able to take her there and not get the ice cream thing? And what happens if, we run out of groceries and then I have to order a pizza? What happens, so how can we prepare for the likely inevitables, right? Or the likely impossible. So the black swan, like we can't see that it's coming, which is the paradox, but we still have to try to think about, okay, what if this thing happens? Because again, the black swan was impossible until it wasn't. And, Mike Tyson once said, everyone has a plan until they get punched in the mouth, right? And that's the thing that I'm saying here is that we can plan for all the stuff that we know is going to happen, but if we get thrown off every time there's a black swan, every time life punches us in the mouth, every time that something comes off of our plan, we're going to have a rough time because that stuff is as inevitable as the other stuff, right? We can't plan for exactly when it will happen, but we can understand that inevitably it is going to happen at some point, right? So this is why before this week's lesson, we spoke about habits and goals, right? James Clear, the author of Atomic Habits, wrote, "You do not rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your systems. Your goal is your desired outcome. Your system is the collection of daily habits that will get you there. This year, spend less time focusing on outcomes and more time focusing on the habit that precedes the results." And this is the same thing that we've been hammering this entire course. Building the goals, building the habits into your routine, into your life, so that when the thing doesn't go as planned, you fall to the level of your systems, right? Like I just said before, when you're in that moment, when you're deciding, do I eat the carrot, do I eat the Oreo? And they're standing in front of the two things and your brain is taking in all these different inputs, it doesn't like to be in that decision. So we want to properly manage our time, properly manage our decision-making so that we're making those decisions prior to being in that exact moment. Now, understanding all that, what does that mean? Let's actually put this in some tangible things. So planning ahead, right? A goal without a plan is just a wish. The most important thing about planning is that it only works when it's done consistently, okay? People always say, like, I have a plan. How, for what? For what time frame? How often are you updating it, right? We should be planning short-term action steps because, as I said before, our brain does not like these long time horizons. So that's the thing is people will have a plan, but the plan is like, I'm going to, change everything by 2 years from now. And while that is a nice goal to have in the grand scheme of things, as we spoke about in goal setting, we need those short-term action goals. And our planning should focus on those things because, like James Clear said, we fall to the level of these systems. Having the short-term action steps are what pushes us along that journey. Instead of, if we have these big long-term plans, there's nothing wrong with having a big, grand, long-term plan if we have the shorter-term action steps to drive us there. We need to keep the time horizon small because that's what our brain can understand. I can very reasonably assess and estimate what is going to happen to my life this week. So as of recording this on Sunday night, if I sit and write out a plan for this week from Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, although there will be some black swan event, there will be some life punch in the face, with fair amount of certainty, I can assume that a lot of this stuff is going to happen. Now, if you take that plan and stretch it out to 6 months from now, much less chance of that being the case. Stretch it out to a year, 2 years. The longer the time horizon gets, the less chance of our plan being able to be true, right? So again, we want to build truth into this so that our brain gets into the habit of saying like, okay, when I set this plan, I achieve it. I set this plan, I achieve it. I set this plan, I achieve it, which makes us more motivated to then stick to the plan. Right? It's all about building those small wins. We've been talking about this every week. And that's why we want those quantifiable deliverables, the checkmark goals that I've spoken about before. I want to be able to say, Sunday night, I make a plan. At the end of the week, did I achieve this plan? Did I stick to the plan? Did I do what I say I was going to do? In simple yes or no. Check it happened or no, it didn't, right? There shouldn't be a, well, I was going by the plan, but then X, Y, and Z. If I am not able to stick to my plan, it means that I did poor planning because I didn't either plan for the inevitable or plan for the inevitable thing that was unavoidable. I mean, the unseen, like the black swan, right? The black swan event. And the only way to do that is to keep the time horizon super short and to focus on the action steps, because we can't plan the result. The result happens because of the action steps. But there are things that are outside of our control. Just like I can plan to invest properly my entire life, but the stock market is going to do what it does. I can plan to be on the perfect diet, but the scale sometimes goes up and it sometimes goes down. So we need to keep it short, actionable, and quantifiable when we're making a plan. And the next thing is scheduling. Scheduling and planning are obviously very closely related. Some people might say it's the same thing, but what gets scheduled gets done is a quote that I love, because if you don't schedule it, it's going to go right to the end of the pile, right? We say we live in the world of infiniteness. You have a phone, you have a laptop, there's TV, there's pings, there's kids, there's grandkids, there's traffic jams, there's elections, there's pandemics, there's always more to do. And if we let ourselves, as I said before, get behind the 8 ball and get into that reactive mode where we're reacting to things, we are 100% going to let time get out of our control. This is all about controlling our time and not letting our time control us, right? So in order to use the schedule to help as a tool to take control of our time, small weekly and daily schedules are the way to push us towards success. We spoke the other day about the one thing or the big rock, right? So what is the one thing that I can do this week such that it would make everything else in my life either easier or not important, right? So if I have whatever the thing is, whatever my goal is, I need to think of the one thing that is going to get me closer to that goal. And that's how I know how to narrow my focus, right? Then my entire weekly schedule becomes built around the one thing. It's the big rock that fills the jar, right? I don't want to be focusing on pebbles and sand to fill the jar. I want to focus on the one big rock that fills the entire jar. That's my weekly schedule. Okay, my one thing for the week. Then I'm going to break it down each day. If I have my weekly schedule and I have my one big thing that I need to achieve by the end of this week, so that's the one thing is the one thing that if I achieve just this and this alone by the end of the week, I will have moved myself closer to my ultimate goal, whatever that ultimate goal is. So now when I'm scheduling, I have my one thing for the week, and now each day I can make my one thing for the day. So what is my one thing today on Sunday that's going to move me closer to my one thing by the end of the week? And I can now break it down even simpler like that. And then I'm actively actually scheduling and writing. You guys know I'm huge at writing things down, literally writing in a schedule planner. I mean, you can use an app if you want, if that's your thing, but writing in a schedule, the actual way that you will be spending your time from the time you wake up to the time that you go to bed at night. That means, yes, planning. At 7 a.m., I'm going to be doing this. At 8 a.m., I'm going to be doing this. At 9 a.m., I'm going to be doing this. And you start each day by going over that schedule. So you can write your week schedule out on Sunday, and then each morning go over it. You can wake up each morning and write out your schedule for the day like that. You can go to sleep the night before and write your schedule before you go to bed and then wake up and go over it. But no matter what, you should have a schedule written out, and you should be either writing it or going over it each morning, because this brings down the time scale, as I was talking about, to a much more manageable thing. Again, our brain understands 30 minutes, an hour increments. It does not understand 10 years, but it understands, okay, today is Monday morning, it's 8 a.m. and these are the things I have to do for the next 6 hours. Very, very easy for your brain to understand and wrap itself around that. And then the next thing when it comes to scheduling is what's called eating the frog. Eat the frog is a term made by Brian Tracy, who's a motivational speaker, which just means that each morning we always have one thing that we know we don't want to do, right? It's that one thing that's like, it's like the hard thing that's really looming over us. And we put it off and we start to do busy work. We're like, oh, I know I really have to get that report in, but I'll go answer some emails and I'll go, oh, I gotta pick up my laundry from the dry cleaner. And I definitely have to go grocery shopping because, you know, like I can't not eat. And then all of a sudden we get to the end of the day and we've done all this busy work, but we never got the one thing done, right? Going back to the one thing, each day I have my one thing. So we start our day by eating the frog. Take the one thing that you really don't want to do and just shove it down your throat and swallow it whole. That's called eating the frog and just getting it done. Because coming back to the one thing, like I said, it's if I do that one thing each day, I know that I moved myself closer to my one thing goal for the week. So if I start each day by eating the frog and doing my one thing, I'll know that I finished my one day each day with my one thing. And if I do that, then I'll know I'll finish my week with my one thing. And if I do that, then I know that I'm moving myself slowly and surely, inch by inch, closer to my goal. But the reason this is so important, again, is because of the small time frame. We're not talking about big 6-month goals. We're not talking about, you know, grandiose ideas of like what could be in the future. We're talking about tangible, very actionable today things, right? So clearly the one thing for the day is not going to be lose 50 pounds because that is not a thing that you can do in one day. But it could be drink more water. It could, whatever the thing is, right? It has to be something super tangible. And this forces us to really narrow down and get granular. So when it comes to time management, listen, you run the day or the day runs you. I really believe this, period. Like I said before, we're never going to be at a loss for things to do in the year 2021 and beyond. Whenever you're watching this, whoever's watching this on replay, there's never going to be a day where you get to 7 p.m. and you're just like, oh, well, I have nothing to do now. There's always going to be more emails coming in, more things to watch, more viral videos, more crazy stuff on the news, more people pulling you this way and that way. And the moment you let yourself get behind the 8-ball, you've lost the game. Being deliberate with your time is the answer to this. And to do that, we do time blocking. So I'm actually going to send to everyone, along with this video, when I send the replay, a time blocking worksheet. And it's going to be broken down from the time you wake up to the time you go to sleep in half-hour increments. So every hour and half hour, I want you writing down what exactly you're doing. How are you spending that time? The more granular, the better. If you want to break it down into 15-minute increments, go ahead, because that would be even better. This is very important because, again, it makes us understand small time increments, which our brain can understand. And also, added benefit is it makes us really realize what we're spending our time on. So to use weight loss as an example and calories, right? Humans are notoriously bad at estimating calories, right? So people think like, oh, like I know about how many, calories I eat or how many calories are in this thing that I'm eating, or on this plate of food. But the reason that we have so much obesity in our country and, why there's so much high blood pressure and diabetes and all these things that come from being overweight is because people are notoriously bad at estimating how much they're eating. They've done studies where even nutritionists who make their entire career working with food overestimate or underestimate food portions by 50 to 60%. And we're the same way with time. We are super bad at estimating time. So we're like, I don't know where all the time went. But that's because we end up saying, I'm going to take a 5-minute break to do my emails, and then that turns into 30 minutes. I'm going to take 15 minutes to talk to someone, that takes 45 minutes. So in the same way that by writing down what we eat makes us understand what calories we're eating, we're like, oh, I thought I was only eating 1,500 calories, but now when I write everything down, I actually see that I'm eating 2,000 calories plus 500 calories on my daily margarita. Okay, now I have a better understanding of this. So time management, we can do the same thing. I thought I was only spending 20 minutes a day scrolling Instagram, but when I really actually look at my timesheet and realize that I had to fill out every 15 minutes what I was doing, I actually spent 2 hours yesterday scrolling Instagram. Maybe if I want to use my time better, that's not a thing that I should be doing. So now, how does all this look for us? I always, again, want to leave with action. I'm going to be giving you a time block worksheet. Each morning or the night before, the goal is to plan out your day from the time you wake up to the time you go to bed. And this is going to be weird and uncomfortable at first because you're going to be like, well, how do I know what my day is going to hold or something like that? That's the point. The point is to, again, be proactive, to take a step back and to do the planning and get ourselves out of that place of like doing everything in the actual moment. So I prefer to do it the night before, but you can do it in the morning as well. But the point is that you are breaking it down into literal 30-minute blocks at the very, very least. If you don't do it at the beginning of the day, then still go back in and do it retroactively at the end of the day so that you can see where you were spending your time. Just like with the calorie counting example, I want to know where are you spending all that time. And it's going to give you a better idea of, okay, if I'm, I'm someone who always says I don't have time to exercise, but now looking at this sheet, which is literally telling me where I'm spending my time, I actually see that I'm spending time 15 minutes here, 30 minutes here, 15 minutes here. And all of that, if I added it up together, it could be an hour that I could save for the gym. So this is a very important thing to get back in the driver's seat, right? We always feel like we're out of control. It's like, oh, the day just takes, I start the day and things just happen and it just takes control of me. And if we have that mental story, if we have that tape running, right? That self-talk of like, yeah, like I just don't have any control over my time. I'm not, there's nothing I can do. It just happens. That's always going to be, we're always going to get to the end of the day with more things to do that we couldn't figure out how to work in. Whereas if we use this timesheet and we say, I am in control of my day, I make the decisions about how I spend my time, then we will start to make that into a reality. And we will start to push ourselves towards that reality where we are in control of every 15, 30-minute time block. Again, it will be uncomfortable at first. It will be weird to write everything out. It will take some time. It's going to take you 15 minutes to sit and plan out your day. But this is all about being deliberate. You're going to learn that you might have to plan buffers, right? So I said before about planning ahead for the things that we know are coming and planning for the things that we don't know are coming. So a few days of planning exactly an hour for the gym and then seeing that every time you go to the gym, there's 15 minutes of traffic, you're going to say, oh, maybe I need to plan a 15-minute buffer at the beginning and end of my gym session. Or if I always say that work ends at 6 o'clock and I'm going to be cooking dinner at 6:15, except now my work call runs late until 6:45. I have to now learn to plan for those inevitable unseen events, right? And that's the entire point of this whole exercise. So I always get a lot of pushback when I tell people to use this worksheet because it's weird and it's uncomfortable. It's like 15-minute, 30-minute blocks. Like that's crazy. It's not crazy. And this is how, if you want to be successful, if you want to take control of your time, this is how it's done. It's a deliberate practice. Taking control of your time will never happen by accident. It has to be something that you make a decision to do. Wake up each morning, do the sheet, right? Time block out each day. And then I want you to post pictures in the group of the completed worksheet. So literally print it out, write your things in, take a picture and upload it. And at the end of the week, I want you to report back. And this is a simple yes or no answer. Did I use the worksheet every day this week, Monday to Friday? That's it. No, I tried, but then this happened. It got crazy. And then this, yes or no. Did I do it or did I not? That's all it is. It's a very, very simple task, but simple does not mean easy. So be on the lookout for the worksheet. I'll be emailing that to you right after this call today. And with that said, as always, do we have any questions? Hold on one second. Let me figure out how to